And so you understand that in a community, there is always sacrifice is always required for the blessings of a community to be shared by all.
Mm. Mm.
You don't have a church without people sacrificing their time, talent, and attention.
Mm-hmm.
If people stop sacrificing their attention, meaning they don't come to church and participate, your church falls apart. People don't sacrifice their money, the church falls apart. People don't sacrifice their talents in order to bring their talents to the church and use it to serve, the church falls apart. Sacrifice is always required for community. The difficulty happens when the sacrifices are involuntary.
Yes. 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 Yeah. When you lose that depth, of that sort of honesty that I talked about earlier, and you're being compelled into sacrifice reluctantly, I mean, that's a recipe for resentment. And then, I think one of my, this lands for me in terms of my personal history. Like, I can think of quite a few people who I think I had damaging interactions with as a child and adolescent in the church sort of authority space, who had been sort of, if not compelled from outside themselves, compelled by themselves. They've been forcing themselves to make these sacrifices. And then this is where it gets all tricky, right? Because oftentimes it's ourselves doing the tyranny over ourselves, right? There's all sorts of, Jung would have a lot to say about this, but that they had been compelling themselves to sacrifice things for long enough that they'd become resentful enough towards others and the whole thing in general, that even their attempt to sacrifice out of compulsion just became destructive.
Yes. And as a pastor, I'm always watching over the flock, and you're looking for signs of when it's going to fail. The relationship with the flock is going to fail. And what you just said right there is exactly what I think. There are often many reasons, but what I think is usually the tipping point. That it's not even that the church has coerced them into this, but I remember when Jordan Peterson was talking about self-tyranny, that the tyranny has gotten so far in themselves, and the dissonance of, I feel the need to sacrifice and I'm resentful of it, it hits a level of dissonance, and done. I'm done. And I walk away. Now, I then watch, and what's so interesting listening to you talk is I watch people walk away. And so then for the first number of years, it's, I'm so glad I'm free from that. I have my Sunday mornings to do whatever I want. I don't have to give that money to the church anymore. I don't have to give them, I can do whatever I want. Years are going to pass. And then stuff is going to happen. Oh, I have to arrange a funeral. I don't really dare ask those people at church. Oh, I have to move and I need a hand. Now, that's where money comes in, because we've developed an entire culture about how to not be indebted to anyone else. If I have enough money, I can hire it out. But but still that layer, and I don't know where you're at, but still that layer of church hauntedness where, shoot, when someone comes into church, and they die, there are casseroles there. There are mourners there. There are helpers there. There are ushers there. And I don't pay them a dime. The reason I don't pay them a dime is because I've been sacrificing the whole time and I'm paid up. And I'm just receiving what I've put back. And it's never fair. There are always the 20% give and the 80% receive, the 20-80 rule in church. But it's always the way it is.
Yeah. one thing that comes up for me there, just sort of as a, it's sort of an aside, but have you ever heard of the book Debt by David Graeber?
Yes, I've read it.
Oh,
It's a
good,
good book.
Good. It's a great book. Yeah. So yeah, okay. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that there's something about there's something about the coming together underneath something that if you do it genuinely, right? If you sacrifice genuinely, I keep coming back to this sacrifice under compulsion versus the joyful sacrifice, the willing sacrifice, the desire to serve,
the cheerful sacrifice.
Yeah. And okay, here's the thing that it reminds me of. I'm one of nine kids, right? I have 8 siblings, and shortly after my first daughter was born, I talked to my mom and I said, "Wow, I'm realizing now with one kid, I'm sort of overwhelmed. Like, how did you raise 9? And thank you for your sacrifice." And she looked at me and she was sort of offended, and she said, "Don't thank me. Don't think it wasn't a sacrifice." And I've thought about that ever since, because what she said was, there's nothing else I would have rather done with my life. And I notice now, as I try to live more in that sort of pattern, that is always the case. It's always the case that when I let go of what I think I want to do, and I do what serves someone else or whatever it is, I'm always more grateful. I'm always more joyful. I'm always more fulfilled. And I mean, it's so, like, we all know this, right? But so many of us don't do it. And so, yeah, yeah.
T. Grogan. Now, Zach, I see you in below, and I dropped the link and we'll bring in people. T. Grogan said, religion does provide community, no doubt about it. So does Marxism, Scientology, Mormonism, etc. And that's true. But community is not the same under every master. And we know this because your place of employment can provide community. For many Americans, their place of employment is their primary community. But there's the quality of the boss, and there's also a spirit of the shop or the office or the vendor that governs, like school spirit. And so the point with this is that what we're really looking to do, we recognize that we need a head. Dylan said, we gotta serve somebody, but the quality of the person you're serving matters. And part of the Jesus revolution was every empire would ask its citizens to sacrifice themselves for the empire. In the empire of the Son of Man from Daniel 7, he sacrifices himself for the rest of the community. And that gets built into our culture where, in America, the president is supposed to be the servant of the nation. Gosh, I wonder where they got that idea. I don't think they got it from Caesar. And they certainly didn't get it from Nero. And so churches, and this is where, so I was halfway through Jonathan Peugeot and Rafe Kelly's conversation, which is just outstanding. It's on Rafe's channel. So Catholics use the word subsidiarity. There's a bunch of other words that get used, but the idea is, well, part of what happened is we used to have the clan. I mean, the nuclear family was that you lived in a village with your uncles and aunts, and there was a patriarch and a matriarch, the shadow matriarchy, and the patriarchy had all of that. Well, in urbanization, that all got mixed in. And so what happened, especially in America, is sociologists noted the congregationalization of almost every religion that made its way to America. And the reason was the clan structures were broken up. And nobody lived by their biological families anymore. And so what they needed to form was a congregation, because you needed your group of 5 to 10, which was maybe your nuclear family. Then you needed your group of 100 to 200, which was sort of your cat-sized church. and then you needed your next size and your next size and your next size, and all on up. And the story that forms the community and the actual leader who is over the community, why is it that the Roman Catholic pedophile priest scandal had such an impact it did? Anyway, sorry, T. Grogan. T. Grogan gets me preaching like none other recently. Because he's
it's right. It's right. It's like you don't get a choice of whether or not to participate in a body. You don't get a choice to follow people. It's just you just get to choose who.
Yes.
And so
sometimes you get to choose who.
Well, yeah.